Well, it's been a couple of weeks and I finally got this package from India. It's a radio. It's a kind of a ham radio made by a guy in India. Paid extra to have it shipped 1 week by DHL, but it took 2 weeks to get here. I'll open this thing up and see what's inside. So, all these cables came with the Bitx. I already know that just from looking at the board and this Arduino that it has a connector that matches with this long connector here. I'm confident that goes with that. And when you look at the board here, the main board, you can see that there's one 3-pin connector on the main board right up here, and that is the volume control. If you go to the hfsignals.com website, you'll find this wiring diagram. You'll also see photographs there that will help you if you're having difficulty reading the wiring diagram like I did. Now, one good thing about this radio is that you don't have to do any soldering on the board itself. It comes with all of these connectors, and they'll connect to various places on the board, and the only soldering you have to do is on the other end of these connectors. And so I'm going to start by stripping off the ends of all these wires and tinning them. Well, I finished most of the soldering, and one thing that's important is that this antenna connector has to have a very short lead. Instructions say to make that less than 3 inches long. I've used a different type of connector that came with a kit to fit my antenna lead. Also, I've taken the board and put it on this tray, which is the bottom of this plastic box I got at the thrift store. And this will be my radio enclosure. You see I've used the various components to draw cutouts, and I'm about to go out and cut out these holes and drill vent holes, and you got the other connectors on the back for the power supply, antenna connector, and an optional item that's highly suggested is a external or a fuse. So I went to a store that had electronic components and got this panel mounted fuse holder. Alright, so what I've done is I've taken my cheap plastic box and I've cut some holes in it to mount the components. I've already got this tuning potentiometer mounted, and I've cut holes for the display, and this volume control and on-off switch will go right there.
Yeah.
And then along the side I've got the microphone and headphone jack mounted, and this fuse holder mounted. It doesn't have a fuse in it yet.
Yeah.
And I've drilled the hole right here for the antenna connector. It's not mounted yet, but I've got it fitted in there. One nice thing was I happen to have one of those cheap step drill bits, and it worked great for cutting through this plastic. You drilled all the holes with that. Well, here is the state of the Bitx 40 transceiver I've been working on. As you can see, I've got all of the wires wired to various components and plugged into the board. I found a speaker, mounted that, found a knob for the tuning potentiometer, and I lost the nut to the volume control potentiometer, so I had to hot glue gun that on there. But I think I want to switch to another potentiometer that has a larger shaft, so I can find a knob that will fit it. That shaft is rather small and the knobs that I've found so far don't quite fit. I've done one modification. I've added a fuse holder from the power supply, put a 2 amp fuse in there, and I'm going to go over the wiring one more time, make sure I didn't make a mistake on the wiring. And then alright, I've plugged in the dummy load. The instructions say clearly not to operate your Bitx without a dummy load or an antenna attached. And I've got the power supply hooked up. Okay, so I've got the Bitx pretty much assembled now. Before I go on any further, I wanted to share a few products that I used in this project. First of all, I got this dummy load from N5JAF. He's got a eBay we'll set a listing for eBay where you can order one of these off of eBay from him, or you can contact him. I think he's got his email there. Timothy Ortiz. It's ortiztim@hotmail.com. It's an email. And for outside where your antenna feed line connects to your antenna, you really should use some waterproof tape. And that's what this is. You can get this also on eBay. The silicone extreme tape is what this particular version is. I had a switch and I got it and disconnected the wires going to this switch on the potentiometer and come to this power switch on the side. So I think what I want to do now is to run my feed line to it and see if I can get it connected to the antenna. Well, I finally got my Bitx 40 put together, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a try, show you how it's working. Got a little bit of a hum. I think partially that might be because of this cheap power supply I've got. It's supposed to have a regulated linear power supply, but I don't think that one quite meets the specs for the Bitx. Let me go ahead and just scan through, starting it down around close to 7 megahertz, and just see what I can hear. I don't know if you can see my screen or not. It's kind of bright. I may need to turn down my brightness a little bit to be able to read it very well. About 96, 102, 109. 128, 159, 171. They're kind of overlapping. Let's see if we can separate them. Looks like we got people competing for the same space. So obviously there's plenty of activity. My radio's a little bit noisy. I'm hoping when I upgrade the power supply and clean up some of the wiring, I need to straighten out some of that mess in there. You can see inside the little plastic tray that I got, it's got Wires just scattered everywhere. I haven't done any wire management yet. But there it is, Bitx 40.